Okay, what's going on, my London Reacts family? I'm back with another NFL reaction video. Today we're checking out a fan's guide to American football defense. So I've been obviously asking a lot of questions throughout my journey and throughout the videos I've been watching, and I thought this is a good video. I think there was a few recommendations for it as well, but I think this is a good video to kind of get a bit of understanding and familiarity with the sort of situational play and kind of, be able to hopefully get a better insight as to how these plays are ran and, seeing it in a real life game, especially as we hopefully make our way to the Super Bowl this year. But yeah, man, let's go ahead and jump into it. Don't forget, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, join the family. We're on the road to 10K, and there's no one doing it like me from the UK. Music reactions, NFL, TV shows, movies, you name it, we've got it, and it's all American based. So yeah, man, subscribe, join the family. We've got Patreon exclusive content as well. Let's get into
A fan's guide to American football defense.
Hey, this video is about American football defenses. We're going to be talking about the individual positions in the defense.
I said NFL. This is actually American football. College, whatever level.
And we're also going to be talking about
defensive line, linebackers, defensive backs. I've always heard, so obviously I've heard of linebackers, but this, now seeing it like this, it actually makes sense what they do. They obviously back the defensive line here, I'm guessing.
About the different defensive formations and different defensive schemes and concepts that you might be seeing when you watch.
I'm going to probably be pausing a lot, so forgive.
Defensive formations and different defense.
Nickel package. Yeah, I don't know what I'm looking at here.
Of schemes and concepts that you might be seeing when you watch a football game. American football is incredibly complex, and understanding what's happening on the defensive side of the ball could be particularly difficult. There are no rules governing how the defense is allowed to line up on their side of the ball, and defenses are always trying to stay one step ahead of the offense, disguising coverage and switching up how they're defending against different offensive looks. So even though there are standard positions and standard concepts that are good to know if you want to understand what the defense is doing, every play is going to look at least a little bit different. This being said, knowing the basics goes a long way.
A couple quick things before we start.
Before we get started, I just want to say a couple things. The first is that if it's not clear from the title of this video, this is a general overview to the topic of American football defenses. This being said, if you think I've left out a detail or some information that is critical for someone to know if they want to understand football,
zone coverage. So this is something that I am familiar with. This reminds me of soccer. You have zonal marking or you have man-to-man marking, which I think both concepts I've heard in American football. So those two I think I've got covered. You've got your lanes, you've got your channels. That's where you're marking basically.
Defenses on a basic level.
If you think I left out a detail that's critical for someone to know, feel free to leave a comment.
Feel free to leave a comment. It's also important to note that this video covers basic defensive concepts as they exist in the NFL and at the highest levels of college football. Okay. We'll talk about this a little bit more later in the video when it comes up.
Defensive positions.
A football defense has 11 players, and these 11 players are generally divided into three groups. You have the defensive line, you have the defensive backs, and you have the linebackers. The defensive line is comprised of the largest members of the defense usually, and their job generally is to disrupt the play at the line of scrimmage and to put pressure on the quarterback. The defensive backs are generally the most athletic players on the defense. Okay. Like, it's not uncommon for them to be multi-sport athletes, like maybe they ran track in college or something like that. And their default roles are to defend against passing plays and to be like the last line of defense against the offense. Then you have the linebackers, who are kind of like a hybrid between the two groups that we just talked about. Maybe on one play, a linebacker will be joining the defensive line in run defense, or maybe the linebacker will be blitzing the quarterback. And then maybe on the next play, the same linebacker will be going out into pass coverage, or will be covering the middle of the field in some sort of zone defensive scheme.
So linebackers basically are your sort of utility player. And if I'm obviously going to put a lot of analogies and comparisons to soccer. So if I'm looking at a soccer level, it's basically your sort of midfielder that can play both. If I to put a player, it's like a Declan Rice, right? He can do box to box, go and score you goals. He can at the top of the pitch, attacking midfielder, and then he can drop back and do all of the defensive work. He can intercept. He can pick the ball up from bad places, from good places, high, low. So universal, basically.
These groups can be further divided into specific positions. So on the defensive line, you have the defensive ends who line up at the end of the line and are often the team's primary pass rushers, and the defensive tackles, who are ideally the most physically imposing and most disruptive players on the field. In defensive formations that use an odd number of defensive linemen, that center defensive tackle is called the nose tackle. And a nose tackle needs to be especially large and powerful because they often have to take on multiple offensive players at the same time. Within the defensive backs, you have the corner backs, whose primary role is to defend against passing plays. And these are the players that are usually assigned to wide receivers in man-to-man coverage. And then you have the safeties, who usually line up deeper in the backfield. And each of these safeties has their own role. There's the strong safety and the free safety. The strong safety tends to line up closer to the line of scrimmage than the free safety. The strong safety will have a variety of responsibilities throughout a game. Most commonly, the strong safety is the defensive player that is assigned to the tight end in man-to-man coverage. But this is far from a rule. The strong safety might instead be assigned to some deep coverage in a zone scheme, or might line up closer to the line of scrimmage to help with the run. They might even be blitzing. And then the free safety lines up farther back, frequently off screen, like you frequently do not see the free safety if you're watching on TV. And the free safety's job is to go wherever is needed in order to stop whatever the offense is trying to do. And by beginning the play as far back as they do, the free safeties also act as that last line of defense, damage control, defender. And then
So basically, they're a free roamer as well. Basically, they can sort of do a few things. What I do want to know, maybe he'll get to it, is that person that usually runs across. I think he said it's the strong safety, right? That will run across the line, the players lining up on the line of scrimmage. And I see it in a lot of plays in general. I think it's to sort of throw the other team off as to what play you're doing or how you're defending or what the tactics are. But hopefully he touches on it.
with the linebackers, you can divide them into the outside linebackers and the middle linebackers. And again, the role of each linebacker will change from play to play based on the defensive scheme and the skill set of the individual linebacker. Because most teams' base scheme and the skill set, each linebacker will change from play to play based on the defensive schemes. And again, the role of each linebacker
waiting to see if the offense is running or passing the ball.
Will change from play to play based on the defense.
Linebacker drops back into pass coverage. QB shows a pass is on the way.
The scheme and the skill set of the individual linebacker. Because most teams' base defense has some combination of 7 linebackers and linemen, the linebackers and linemen are generally referred together as the front 7. And the area on the field that they inhabit is called the box. This is in contrast to the defensive backs, who are sometimes referred to as the secondary. And the area of the field that they kind of patrol and inhabit is also known as the secondary and sometimes the defensive backfield.
Basic defensive formations.
Right.
Most American football teams have what is called their base defense. And a team's base defense is usually described by the arrangement of the linemen and linebackers. For example, in a 5-2 defense, there are 5 linemen and 2 linebackers. In a 4-3 defense, there are 4 linemen and 3 linebackers. And then in a 3-4 defense, there are 3 linemen and 4 linebackers. For the purposes of keeping things consistent for this video, anytime I show a diagram, it will be of a 4-3 defense, or it will be assuming that the team has a 4-3 base defense. So one with 4 linemen, 3 linebackers, and 4 defensive backs. In addition to their base defense, teams will employ a number of situational formations over the course of a game. These are sometimes called different packages, especially if it involves shuffling players on and off the bench. One common package that you'll see many times in every game is the nickel package. In the nickel package, one member of the front 7, and it's almost always a linebacker, is replaced with a 5th defensive back. Right, it's called the nickel because there are now 5 defensive backs. And the player that comes in as that 5th defensive back is usually called the nickel back, or the nickel corner, or sometimes the slot corner, because they generally will be covering the slot receiver. This is one of those cases where overlapping terminology.
Slot receiver, a receiver who lines up in the slot between the O-line and the wide receiver on the line.
And synonyms might be confusing. The nickel package is generally overlapping terminology, and synonyms might be confusing.
Okay.
The nickel package is generally used when the defense expects the offense to throw the ball. An example of this is if the offense is using 3 wide receivers on a play. In situations like this, a defense will often go into its nickel package to have that extra defensive back on the field to cover that 3rd wide receiver or to cover what they think is going to be a passing play. You might also see a defense bring out their dime package. This is where you bring out a 5th and 6th defensive back, right? Because a dime is 2 nickels. And then in extreme types of situations where the offense needs to get a ton of yards in the air, you might see the defense bring out what's sometimes called the quarter package or the prevent defense, where you've got 7 defensive backs on the field. Again, these are all packages that a defense might use to defend against the pass. In a situation where the defense expects the offense to run the ball, they might instead stack the box with 8 players for a defensive arrangement that is frequently called 8 in the box. In this arrangement, it's most common for the strong safety to be that 8th defender up front, but this is not a rule. This is a defensive arrangement that might make it difficult for the offense to run the.
So this is a play that I see a lot of teams making, especially when they've got very low yardage remaining, or they're usually in the red zone and you see them running this. But even in normal plays, I see it, and I've always wondered why, because usually they don't end up getting far. I mean, the odd one does go through, but from what I've seen anyway, usually they end up, as we're looking at right now, piled up.
The ball. But because there are only 3 players in the secondary, if the offense is able to penetrate the defense, or if they're able to complete a pass that avoids the congestion in the middle, there's the potential for the defense to give up a ton of yardage when they're using this type of formation. All right, so we just covered some basic defensive formations and alignments that you're going to see. There are a couple more things to cover in this section. First, let's go back to the nickel package. Traditionally, the nickel package has been a situational defensive formation that a team might roll out to defend against the pass. However, over the past decade or so, there has been a strong trend towards teams using the nickel formation as their base defense, and this is in response to the pass-heavy offenses that have become popular in the NFL and in college football over the past decade. For example, as of the 2022 football season, the Buffalo Bills run a base nickel defense. So their base defense has 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and 5 defensive backs. So in a situation like this, that 5th defensive back, that nickel back, is actually a core member of the defense and is not just the 5th defensive back on the depth chart who comes off the bench in certain situations. By the way, 5th defensive back on the depth chart is the most difficult thing I've ever said in my life. Try saying that 5 times fast. A variation on this base nickel idea is the 3-3 stack, also known as the 3-3-5. In this base formation, you've got 6 in the box by default, and they're arranged in 2 rows of 3. And then you've got your 5 defensive backs. The 3-3 stack has become popular at the college level in the past few years as a way to have a flexible defensive formation that can defend against the run and the pass, and that does not require 4 quality defensive linemen, which are ultimately harder to come by at the college level. Quality defensive linemen, which are ultimately harder to come by at the college level.
Same thing.
Defenders in the 3-3-5 scheme often have roles that are hybrids of the more traditional roles, and the individual defensive positions might even be referred to by new names. All right, now that we've talked...
This is so similar to soccer. It's crazy. You have literally wingers and sometimes strikers dropping back and doing defensive work. This is basically similar stuff. Obviously I know it's a completely different team of offense and defense, but just in terms of the responsibilities and the way that the role and the requirement of the roles have adapted over time, I can see clearly that the requirements of each position is changed and evolved.
About the basic defensive positions and formations, let's talk about a couple other concepts that you'll want to know.
The blitz.
On the majority of plays, the defense will have...
See, I think I know the blitz. This is when you have, for example, right here, we've got 4 players lining up. Their job is to blitz or run and attack the QB, right? Sometimes you have 4, sometimes you have a 2-man rush, sometimes you have no blitz. Pretty sure.
4 players whose role is to disrupt the play at the line of scrimmage and put pressure on the quarterback. A blitz is a play where the defense sends 1 or more additional players to pressure the quarterback.
Okay, no blitz is... Well, yeah, that is right? If you have send no players, then there's no blitz.
defensive player can be involved in a blitz. It's usually one or more of the linebackers, but it can be a cornerback or even the free safety. The idea of more extra players to the pass rush,
More
you have
space.
fewer defenders who are in a position to defend midfield and or downfield.
Basic pass coverage concepts.
There's two basic types of pass coverage concepts in American football. There's man-to-man coverage, which is frequently just called man coverage, and there's zone coverage. These two concepts are exactly what they sound like. In man-to-man coverage, individual defensive players are assigned a specific member of the offense to cover. So it's their job to keep track of where they are, to try to disrupt their route, and to try to beat them to the ball if the ball is being thrown to them. In zone coverage, individual defensive players are assigned an area of the field to cover. Zone coverages can look a lot of different ways, and teams are always going to be mixing up what the zones look like and which players are covering which zones. It should be said now that a pure man-to-man setup where every pass defender is assigned a receiver is uncommon. And this is because this type of setup leaves you susceptible to big plays. What's more common, and this is true whether the defense is playing man-to-man defense or zone defense, is for one or more of the defensive backs to be assigned a deep zone. In this example, we see a nickel defense where 3 of the cornerbacks and 1 of the linebackers are in man-to-man coverage, and we can see the 2 safeties are in the back in a deep zone. There are a few different ways in which this concept is described, and you'll often hear it referred to as the defensive shell. And a shell is most commonly described by the word cover, followed by the number of defensive backs that are committed to deep zone coverage.
Explain that one more time for me. Shell, deep coverage provided by one or more DBs, defensive backs.
As the defensive shell. And a shell is most commonly described by the word cover, followed by the number of defensive backs that are committed to deep zone coverage.
Okay.
In a cover 0 scheme, there is no player specifically assigned to deep coverage. In a cover 1 scheme, there's one player who is responsible for deep coverage.
Hey, this might be the biggest takeaway I get from here. Like, I look at a game straight away, I can say, okay, they got a cover 1, they got a cover 2, you know?
And it's usually the free safety. In a cover 2 scheme, there are 2 players who are assigned to deep coverage, and it's usually the safety tandem. So the strong safety and the free safety will both take half of the deep portion of the field. And then with a cover 3 and a cover 4, you are getting the cornerbacks involved in the defensive shell. There are other terms to describe this concept. Instead of saying, for example, cover 2, you might hear an analyst say that a team is in a too deep shell or a too high set or something like that. And these all basically mean the same thing. A team might also run what's called a Tampa 2, which involves a too high shell that the middle linebacker will join in a passing situation. All right, that's everything we're going to cover in this video. We covered the basic defensive positions and the most common formations and gave an overview of a couple basic
Zone
concepts
coverage,
that you'll need to know
man-to-man
as a fan if you want to understand what's happening on the defensive side of the ball. As I said earlier, the information in this video mostly applies to
Alright, we don't need his disclaimer. To be honest, this was very informative and very informational. I have to admit, I think it's still going to be pretty hard for me to see this. I think the covers, I will understand easily. I'll be able to see that in a game and be like, okay, they got a 1 cover, they got a no cover, they got a 2 cover. That's cool. I think I need to understand who plays for what position, you know, especially for example with the Rams. If I understand each of my players, see who's lining up, and say, okay, we got 3 we got 3, you know, linebackers and X, Y, and Z. Then cool. I think I would have a better understanding. But so far, this was good. This is a good sort of start, and a good reference point. So I think you know, I'm still improving, still got a way to go, but this is definitely a great recommendation, and I appreciate it. And I will be checking out. I think there's another one, another similar video that I want to get to, because you know, knowledge is key. You can't watch too many of these, and definitely don't have 100% knowledge or understanding just yet. But we're getting there. It's a journey, and that's why I need you guys to join me on this journey. Smash that subscribe button, join the family. And don't forget, like the video if you like the video, man. Help the algorithm, help push me. You see we got Patreon there, US TV shows, US movies, US exclusive content, NFL highlights, you name it, it goes on there. So yeah, man, subscribe, join the family, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.